just a second. Tom, are you there? Tom is a physician, right, Tom?
I'm an emergency physician in Washington State.
An emergency physician in Washington State. For how long, Tom?
23 years.
23 years. And you have something you want to say?
I'm a board-certified emergency physician, and I've been doing this for a very long time, and have attended the deaths of an awful lot of people. And I was in the emergency department late one evening when a woman had a cardiac arrest at a restaurant, and she had completely collapsed, was unresponsive, and they called the ambulance. The ambulance drove down about 6 or 8 blocks, caught an elevator, up the service elevator up to where she was at, and when they found her, she was completely unresponsive and in ventricular fibrillation. There's no blood flow to her brain at all. And when they arrived at the scene, they put a breathing tube in her and gave her some electric shocks, and her heart started breathing. And it was about 5 minutes. It was at the very, very very longest that people who suffer this kind of event come back with any kind of meaningful intellectual activity. I mean, she was way out there. When she arrived in the emergency department about 15 minutes later, she was, for all practical purposes, next to brain dead. If you imagine your house with all the lights on as a normal person, there was one bathroom light on. I mean, it was that little tiny thing that you plug into the electric switch. That was all that was left. She had a gag reflex if you pulled on the endotracheal tube, and there was no other response in her. She was admitted to the intensive care unit and cared for and eventually discharged from the hospital. And I sort of lost follow-up on this lady. About a year later, I was in the emergency department. There was this perky red lady complaining of some chest problems on the stretcher, and I walked in and introduced myself. We had a little chat, and then I went back and looked at her old records, and there was this record of this lady who had had this horrible cardiac arrest and was next to brain dead when I admitted her to the hospital. And I said, "My God, how did things go after your cardiac arrest?" And she said, "Well, they couldn't get me through the kitchen. They couldn't get me through the kitchen." And I go, "What?" And says, "All I remember about my cardiac arrest was they couldn't get me through the kitchen." And as there are things that happen, there's serendipitous events, and at the very same time that this lady was in the emergency department on her second visit, the medic who had resuscitated her in that restaurant was in my lounge eating dinner. And I asked him to come over and explain this situation. He said, "Oh my God, we could not get in." He didn't hear me talk with her.
Right.
This is a completely unrelated event. So I said, "Wayne, what happened to this lady at this arrest at the restaurant a year ago?" And he goes, "Oh, we couldn't get her through the kitchen. The hallways in the kitchen, through the winding corridors, through those tables, you couldn't get the stretcher through the kitchen." And they jammed their stretcher in the kitchen. They couldn't get her out through the kitchen.
No way she could have known that.
There's no way she could have known it. And here, these two independent people corroborate this story that they couldn't get her through the kitchen.
Well, there you go.
Yep. There you go.
So thank you, doctor. Thank you very much.